This conference will now be recorded.
All right, Alan Pelz-Sharpe, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. So, done lots of things with Yanis over the years, and I think my role is to come in and talk about things that nobody else is talking about. Seems to be the general gist of it. So, this time I really wanted to talk today, and I want this to be an open discussion. And I know everybody says that, but I actually mean it. I don't mind being interrupted. So if anything comes up, do just jump in. Basically, I mean, I'm using this term digital supply chain. And I'll explain what I mean by that. It sort of works at various different levels. But to start from the end, really, from a product manager's perspective, because, you know, at Deep Analysis, we're an analyst company. We work with a lot of, you know, technology firms, from the big ones to the small ones. And we work with a lot of product managers. So I am not a product manager, but I think I at least can sort of see that world somehow or other. And if there's one market over the years that in the content and process world, if we can loosely call it that, that has been almost completely ignored, it's been supply chain, which is interesting because it's massive. If we take just as one example within the supply chain, in the US, the food supply chain is worth $3 trillion, right? So we're not even factoring in everything else, from cars to you know, PCs to office furniture to whatever. It's a massive industry, and yet Silicon Valley, which, you know, I sort of like to joke is sort of my second home and has been really throughout my career. It's one of those areas that you can go from, you know, our friends at Dropbox and Box to Oracle and whoever else, to Cisco for that matter. And supply chain is considered a small niche, and it's always fascinated me as to why. And I think, you know, there's lots of reasons why it's perceived that way, but out of this dreadful situation we're in, this pandemic, there's never been a time probably when the supply chain has been more in focus. Everybody's sort of suddenly aware of it, be that because you can't get whatever product in the supermarket, or you're seeing it on the news that, you know, the supply chain's struggling. So I think there's a few things here just at a very high level. One, supply chain, as I say, is a bigger topic. It's more topical than it's ever been. So it's sort of in the mind's eye. Second, I think a more, I don't know if it's philosophical, psychological, sociological, theological, whichever the logical you prefer. At the moment, we're recognizing, maybe temporarily, but we are recognizing how interconnected and how interdependent we actually are. And to give just a practical example from a product management standpoint and you know, content and process angle, we did a project. I obviously won't say who. I get myself into a lot of trouble. But we did a project with a pretty big tech company. I'm going to say last year, about summer last year, and it was to do with citizen services. So they do a lot with customer experience, but they've managed to land a deal, a big one in Europe with a government division. And it wasn't their fault, but the long story short, as you can probably gather here, is the project didn't go well. A lot of money was spent. New websites were built, new customer experiences were designed, the customer journey was mapped out. It all looked fantastic. When it launched, so relaunched really, it took over an old process and launched with this new digital process. The backlash was almost immediate. Everybody hated it. And it wasn't because of bad you know, customer experience, development and design. It wasn't because it was an ugly website. It wasn't because of a lot of things. I mean, it actually was because Nobody'd really looked at how the process worked, how the underlying process for that citizen worked. The actual problem really, and I'm not oversimplifying, I'm being actually quite real about this, was a set of paperwork which now could be filled in beautifully and quickly online, sat for 3 weeks in an office waiting to be processed. Oddly enough, people lived with that previously and just like, oh, I sent my paperwork in, I'll see when they get back to me. But now their expectation was, boom, it's all going to happen immediately. And of course, the same delays were in place. Nobody'd ever thought of changing those. But I give that as an example of sort of supply chain thinking, of how we really all have to, and it's sort of common sense, but one of my overused phrases is common sense isn't that common. We do need to think about all of the steps. And so I think this concept of supply chain thinking is going to, stay with us for some time. Things will change, that's for sure, but and we'll forget all of the great lessons and all of the great problems we've encountered. Humans are wonderful at that. In 6 months' time, we'll be moving on. But I won't tell you very much about deep analysis. That's fine. You can look up this for yourself. But we've been around a few years, and I've already told you sort of roughly what we do. But we publish a lot of reports. We research trends and market sectors, and we advise companies, both enterprises and tech vendors, on roadmaps, product strategy, go-to-market strategy, and stuff. But the bottom line is here, we actually have quite a lot of expertise in supply chain. And we even have an analyst on our team, Gennady, who's a true expert at a granular level. And probably not for the blog post, so this bit's a bit off record, but we've never really been able to sell that supply chain expertise to anybody. This past 3 to 4 months, that has changed completely. It's an exaggeration to say that everything we're doing right now is supply chain related, but it's over half of what we're doing at the moment. And that seems likely to go up. And the bottom line is, it's a huge opportunity. And people are now, for the first time, sort of realizing that. And I think there is a potential revolution coming out of this pandemic, where the supply chain is going to go through a transformation which it hasn't really had. If we look at the supply chain of the 1990s, it's not much different today. Very inflexible enterprise applications. So there's a perception, if you watch the media, that warehouses are all driven by robots and AI, not actually the real world. There are examples of that, sure, there's a few. But generally speaking, it's not like that at all. Very limited insight into data. We've just had, I've got a client at the moment who's terrific, but it's hard work. They're struggling because they know the data they need to work with is there, but how to get hold of it and extract it, it's really hard. So lots of manual workarounds, a lot of paper, a lot of physical documents and forms. And actually, when it comes to communications, frankly, it's cell phones and email. If you want to know where a truck is, I guess there's a GPS system and there's a system somewhere that could tell you, but nobody would ever use that. They just call the driver and ask him. So the 90s supply chain is actually 2020's supply chain. Again, there are exceptions. And IBM, for example, runs some great advertisements about how AI and robotics and everything is changing that world at a rapid pace. But as I say, it's really not, it's just not like that. But it is going to change, and I think this is where there are big opportunities. The appetite for change is there. I mean, we're watching what's happening in the supply chain from a distance, but inside the supply chain, this has been terrible. I mean, this has been a nightmare for them. And so there are opportunities here for everything that I've listed on here, you know, RPA, robotic process automation, process mining. It's probably not really in your sphere of things. I won't go into these ones too much. Predictive analytics, etc. But if you take all of this together, contextual collaboration is key here. Collaboration is key here. Supply chains are ultimately, if you think about it conceptually, they're bunch of links, right? A lot of links in a chain. If one link is broken, nothing works, right? And that's really where things are going wrong. I mean, I know because it's part of our work, but I mean, you have massive deliveries of product X coming to this warehouse that aren't needed, and you have big gaps where things are needed, and then that filters all the way down to the actual customer, who, whether that be an end user, a customer in a shop, or whether that be a distributor, everybody's unhappy. So there's an appetite for change, there's a need for change. That change needs to come through greater collaboration, certainly. It needs to come through leveraging some of the technologies that are out there. And I'm going to take a pause at that because I know I've been talking for a little while, but when I say that's coming, I mean, it's coming. We're already seeing it. And, you know, this is just for you guys to have a look at for a later date if you're interested, but it's actually a real world example. So this is a project we worked on last year. I got to travel out to the Philippines, a country I actually said I would never visit again after a miserable visit to Manila during an election where I needed an armed guard. And I always put this down as one of my worst travel experiences and never wanted to repeat it. But I was back there last year on the island of Cebu, which is absolutely fantastic. Looking at and overseeing actually a blockchain project. So basically, crab meat, pasteurized. I mean, I won't go through all the steps of here. It was basically pasteurized, canned, put in the back of a refrigerated truck. I've got pictures of me in the back of the refrigerated truck if you want evidence. Placing small sensors and tracking that shipment across the Pacific Ocean to California, to it being unloaded in California, to going into cold storage unit in California, back into trucks, and then twice swapping trucks across to Boston, all run on a blockchain, all run on a mobile app. I mean, this was a proof of concept for a startup. I mean, it worked like a dream. The thing is here, it worked like a dream. And the thing, and I was only overseeing the project, but the question everybody kept asking me along the line was, well what else are we supposed, what else do we do? What do we do now? And I was like, no, you've done it. You scanned it, you captured it on your portal, it's recorded it. It's the same thing. Massive reduction in paperwork, massive reduction in time, actually, and a huge increase in visibility and transparency. So it's not, we're not talking about ideas for the future. We're talking about things that are actually already happening out. I oversaw similar projects, one to do with shipments of honey from the south of Brazil, cut flowers from Bogota in Colombia, probably my favorite, which was artisanal olive oil from the south of Italy. It's really good, tasted fantastic. I mean, this is happening today. What fascinates me is this is not just the world of Cisco and IBM. This is not just IT and networking and enterprise blockchain. This is a transformation that's going through this entire industry from top to bottom. It's customer experience on down. I mean, if you think about the IoT, you think about the blockchain, you think about the business network capabilities, it's all very, very, very technical. But why are they doing it? Well, for some, it's so that the customer can push their cell phone up against a barcode or a Q code, and they say, oh yeah, this really is artisanal olive oil, and here's its journey right back to this olive grove in Italy. So it's for traceability. For some, it's food safety. For a lot of it, it's just reduction of price and a reduction of costs. But it's all about improving the end-to-end experience and the end-to-end supply chain. And as I say, that's happening today, and it's happening at speed. And the final thing I'll say, because I know I'm talking a long time here, is we've got a report coming out next week. Our research is free, by the way, so I'm not selling anything here. If you want to access our research, just go to our website. But there's a research paper coming out in the coming week on China, on China's what's called BSN, Blockchain Services Network. The scale and ambition and what they've already delivered is jaw-dropping. I mean, it really is staggering. And we're seeing such huge steps in the supply chain world and in sort of the digital supply chain that I just do fear that in the US and in Europe, and I feel because I'm an American citizen with an English accent, I can talk about both with some level of, you know, validity. We're getting left behind. We're doing so many things so well. But when it comes to the global supply chain, really the networks which hold this world together, if you like, we are just missing the boat here, almost literally missing the boat here. I think there's huge opportunities here. I'm going to finish with sort of a warning though. It's been great business for us at Deep Analysis. We're bringing on new customers. It's awesome. We're busy. I didn't know that a few months ago. I didn't know we were going to have anything to do now, but we're busy. However, I will say I really admire the customers we're working for. They see the opportunity, they're trying to grasp it. But it's a huge learning curve. It's a huge learning curve. And I'm saying this because it's probably my favorite. You're not supposed to have favorites, but my favorite customer. They work so hard, they're so diligent. They really want to do a good job here. But it's been an educational process with them, where they wanted to go out with a supply chain application. And we've had to sort of roll them back in and explain that this is really a huge ecosystem with its own language, with its own dynamics, that these people understand this, these ones don't understand that, these ones talk about this, these ones want to know this. And so this learning curve is natural for everybody. And I really hope software vendors, particularly content and process related, really start to get on that track now, because the opportunities are huge. If we take what is probably the most boring element of technology, hands down, which is document capture, I can't think of anything duller than optical character recognition and scanners. I mean, that's just, to me, I hate it. But it's a huge opportunity for them. And they're suddenly realizing that, hold on, $3 trillion market there, and they're all reliant on paper. How did that happen? How did we miss that one? So, you know, there's opportunities here for everybody. So that's my sort of massive high
Thank you,
level
Alan.
6 mile overview.
Thank you, Alan. So we still have some time for Q&A. Thank you for sharing from your recent learning curve. Perhaps I can hand it over to Mark in Hamburg. Your thoughts, reflection?
Well, actually, that's super interesting, and that's something that we are seeing as well. So especially like how much you can achieve with very little technology.
Yeah.
Exactly as you mentioned, scanning, OCRing stuff. This is like, it's been there for a while, but people are still reliant on paper. Electronic signatures, super interesting market. It's like when people ask for who's your biggest competitor in the e-signature market, it's pen and paper.
It's pen and paper.
It's pen
Absolutely.
and paper still. I just very recently read somewhere that fax is still around.
Fax
People
is
are
huge.
still sending faxes, especially in the supply chain, by the way.
Yes.
This is one of the verticals where you always have a lot of faxing going on. So I think you're totally right. It's a huge opportunity. So thanks for your talk, and thanks for mentioning it, because it's really
no, but to your point, it's simple things like improved customer experience, improved document capture. They make a big difference. They really excite these people. And to be blunt about it, they'll spend good money.
So how about you, Bruno, in Switzerland?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, not only from Switzerland perspective, but also from Latin America, and it's a market that we address. Because not only pen and paper are the against that we are fighting for, but also the regulations over this industry, because we are fighting against government. When you talk about the blockchain solution, simple blockchain solution to tracking down an item, they got afraid because with that you can erase the corruption over the chain. Just a simple technology will erase the corruption. So, and we face this challenge against government when we talk about, okay, let's implement some new good experience for our customers.
Yeah, blockchain's a topic close to my heart. So, and you know, I've done blockchain work I mentioned before, blockchain work in Colombia and in Brazil. And very quickly, I think what's interesting, you're absolutely right. It can literally erase the potential for a lot of corruption. So there's a pushback against it, but over time, it's going to happen. And again, I would recommend you have a look at what China's doing with their BSN network. They're very interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. We are in a forceps digital revolution.
There we go.
So, Ellie?
Yeah, people, I investigate a lot of blockchain technology for the last 2 years, actually. Initially, it's because I was looking to find a system that could protect the consent of people when they are giving away their data and how to track that over time. And then I start to dig into the blockchain itself. And because I was looking at the blockchain as a system of record, as a database, a specific database and so on, but digging into it and reading a lot of the Blockchain Institute white papers and documents, I discovered an entire new world of projects and ideas. And what is interesting is that people are explaining the blockchain as a potential second era of the internet, the transactional era. And it's amazing to see that on one side. And then I was reading an article yesterday about the problem that Japan is actually struggling with COVID and social distanciation. Is 90% of the contracts are done using an ink pad. You know, everybody has the, you know, this pad with the signature of the company of the person. And it's very important. It's like you, and you need to put that. And even in Switzerland, for instance, some notary people requires you know, to be in the room with the notary to sign the thing, like selling shares or creating company, whereas, you know, sometimes you can just click and have a digital signatures with companies that are here over years, like DocuSign or the Adobe and so on. I mean, jurisdiction as recognizing digital signature are now approved. So yeah, blockchain is very interesting for that. But if at one point in the process someone is not accepting that, then the validity of the information you store in the blockchain could be jeopardized. And you know, when I was looking at your schema, one important thing when you talk about supply chain on an international basis is custom. If the custom people, so government association, are not part of the process, then at a point when you cross the frontier, there is a question, because the customs will not publish that information into the blockchain because they are not equipped. And you coming back to your comment about the fact that government need to support those initiatives to secure the entire chain, but people are quite reluctant about that because of the transparency and all their related consequences.
I think you're right, and I can't. And by the way, Ellie, I must say, I think we've actually met multiple times over the years.
Yeah.
Now my memory's coming back, so my apologies. But yeah, I mean, just very, very quickly, you're 100% correct. If you take the Middle East and China, that's already sort of happening, right? The governments are sort of leading the charge. It's starting to happen in what I can loosely call Latin America. Certain countries, Colombia is a good example. They've already essentially published a lot of work. They want this to happen. So it's piecemeal. And I don't think one replaces the other overnight, but it will happen. But I will say quickly that the US is probably the most far behind. They've done nothing.
So I think we have time for one closing comment. Anybody has a question? If not, I will give it back to you, Alan. Thank you very much for giving us this introduction to, like you said in the beginning, a topic that we haven't talked about so much yet. But thank you very much. And I agree with the comments. Good to see the reflection from everybody here from around the world, the different time zones. So thank you, Alan, for finding the time to share your insights as always. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. And it's genuinely sheer coincidence, but there's a new report on our website today on digital supply chain, which I stole those graphics from. So if you want to go and download that, feel free. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, I'm pretty easy to find. So
I'll make sure to link to that. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye
Bye,
now.
guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.